Welcome in, everybody. It's Parker Gabriel here, Ryan McFadden over there, Denver Post Broncos reporters coming to you on a fresh edition of the First and Orange podcast. First one in a while. And the reason why is obvious, Ryan, because you know what time it is.
Yeah, we're back. Football
We're
season.
back. Summer's over. Summer is so far over. If you've got another month of it before kids go back to school, you go back to school, whatever, enjoy, because in the NFL world, summer's over, training camp's here. It's time to board the aircraft carrier, as Sean Payton would say. We're coming to you. It's Tuesday, 5 p.m. when we're recording this. And so I guess we'll just start right here. Ryan, how was your summer? Did you have a good summer?
It was great. Since the last time we did this, I had a sister that graduated from college.
Beautiful.
Went on a 7-day cruise with limited Wi-Fi access, which it's something that's needed before we get into this grind. And I've been slowly, not all the way there yet, been improving my golf game. So,
oh, there we go. Perfect. Well, that's the way to do. Like, I find that getting to a place where you have no cell reception is the only way to fully get away from everything.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. But we're no longer away from it. We'll be on the beat every day from here through January and beyond, obviously. 2024 NFL calendar is before us. The Broncos will be on the field beginning on Wednesday this week, basically like 15 out of 17 days, I think I counted, until they get on the plane and go to Indianapolis for the first preseason game. So there's plenty to talk about, including obviously like what the quarterback picture is going to look like. Not only when they go to Indy for the first preseason game, but then obviously like come early September when the season starts in Seattle. But Ryan, I guess just based on like who we talked to today when we were over there, let's start on the contract front. It's a time we've seen around the NFL, like Tyson Campbell got a big deal today with Jacksonville. Christian Darrisaw, the Minnesota tackle, got a giant extension just like in the last couple hours. And so the Broncos have sort of like one of their own that they've taken care of now this offseason, and another big one out there that we're not really sure. Sean Payton not in the mood to shed a lot of light on Pat Surtain's status on that front today. But Quinn Meinerz, right guard, obviously for the Broncos, late last week signed a 4-year extension through 2028. It's base $72 million. It's up to $80 million with $8 million in incentives. It's a massive contract. It makes him one of the 5 highest paid guards in the NFL. And listening to him talk today was sort of classic Quinn Meinerz, right? Like, it was not, I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to do this and that. It was, we're still trying to wrap our minds around what that kind of money means. I guess first, like what I imagine you weren't surprised when they got that deal done just because of, the kind of player Quinn's been, but kind of put into perspective what it means for the Broncos and just, obviously them showing him the kind of money that makes him a cornerstone player for the organization.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Like, I wasn't surprised, and it seemed like at some point it was gonna get done, or you're gonna hear conversations about a contract getting contract talks between the Broncos and Quinn. So am I surprised of this getting done? No, not at all. And also, you got to think about who Sean Payton is and how much he values offensive linemen. He spoke about it today, and we look at what the Broncos have invested in the offensive line since Sean Payton's walked in the building. And you gave Quinn Meinerz $80 million, Ben Powers 51.5. Then you gave 0.5 million to Mike McGlinchey. So this is typical Sean Payton. He's showing you this is what he values for a team in the offensive line. And Quinn is a pillar of this offense. Like, he's a young guard. He established himself as one of the best of his position last year. So to get that done, get that deal done out the way, I see this is something you should expect, especially coming from a team that's run by Sean Payton.
Yeah, definitely. And it's substantial for a lot of reasons. One, because he's one of only 5 interior offensive linemen now that is in that sort of $20 million a year range. But beyond that, Ryan, I mean, like, this is the first extension for an in-house player. Like, obviously they've signed free agents. They spent a lot of money on Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers, like you said, Zach Allen, some other guys. But in terms of a pure, in-house extension, it's the first one the Broncos have done since Russell Wilson in the fall, like just before the season started in 2022. And that means it's the first one like truly done on the watch of this ownership group. Like obviously they wrote the check for Russell Wilson, which, money not all that well spent as it turns out 2 years later. But like this is the first one that's been fully under their watch. It obviously won't be the last, but it has been interesting that they've been pretty cautious about doing that. And so Meinerz is first down the chute in that. And it's interesting, like you said, Ryan, Sean today talked about, he's called the offensive line the most important position group on your roster. Like, I think if the cap situation was different, he probably would have paid Lloyd Cushenberry too to stay around. They lost him 4 years and $50 million to Tennessee in the offseason, but they're clearly not afraid to plow a ton of money into that offensive front line, especially given, what the quarterback picture looks like for the franchise right now. That sort of brings us to it could be, it could be Baron Browning or Jonathan Cooper. Like it doesn't have to be Pat Surtain that's next, but you would imagine that at some point they will try to get that done. Pat, especially like you see what Tyson Campbell got today, 4 years, $76 million, I think $53 million guaranteed. Like Pat is going to go well past that. He will almost undoubtedly reset the market depending on how he and Sauce Gardner, kind of like the order that happens in. And so every time one of these deals gets done, Ryan, especially with a defensive back around the league, like I always find myself thinking about it in the context of Pat Surtain and just like the Brinks truck that is coming his way, whether it's in the next few weeks before the season starts or at some point in the next 12 months at the latest.
Oh yeah. When you look at Pat Surtain, this is a guy that's, when he does sign, it's going to be the highest paid cornerback in the league, and probably he might have one of the highest paid contracts for a non-quarterback.
Yeah.
And thing is, the Broncos, it'd be wise to get out ahead of it in a sense, because if more guys keep signing, then it's like the price tag just going to keep going up. And right. Pat Surtain, he deserves it. There's no question about it. You're talking about a top 3 cornerback in the league. ESPN did their rankings. They put him at number 1 on their cornerback list, and he's only 24 years old. This is he has proven himself to be one of the top defensive players in the league and just hitting his prime in a sense. So if the Broncos are serious about, this whole idea of laying the foundation for the future and trying to build this into a winning organization, I think right there, you already got Quinn down. You got to figure out a way to lock down Pat Surtain for the foreseeable future, because at the moment he is that guy. He is your face of your defense, and you can make that argument until we figure out what direction Denver is going to go with the quarterback position. Right now, Pat is looked at as the face of the team as a whole, because he is the best player on the roster. So you would think the Broncos try to want to get out ahead of it. I don't know if it's going to be before during this training camp period, but you would have to assume they're going to have to start these talks to get a deal signed, get something on the table with Pat.
Yeah, definitely. And it's going to be like, there's so many, I think, with Quinn, it probably fits a little bit cleaner, just in the sense of like, there's a very clear number that the top 5 guards in the league make. With Pat, it's a little bit more like, obviously there's some big ones coming up. There's the cornerback market's been a little weird the last couple of years. Like Jair Alexander got $21 million a year as an average annual value. L'Jarius Sneed and now Tyson Campbell today kind of like handed off the baton on guaranteed money. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Pat goes to the top of the list, basically like by any metric, by all of those metrics. Some of it's going to depend on, the Broncos would probably, like, you'd want him on a longer deal, right? 5 or 6 years. Does he want 4 so that he's back to potentially being a free agent when he's, 28 years old, basically? So it feels like there's a little bit more ground, I think, to cover probably in that regard. But I totally agree with you. Like, the sooner you get it done, the better. And then one thing, not to go like too far into the weeds on this, but the way that they structured Quinn's contract was, it is a true 4-year extension after this year. So it covers 25 through 28, but they did restructure the way that he gets paid this year. And that allowed them to basically start prorating the bonus, suppress the cap number, all of that, without his cap number going up this year. So that way, like, they dropped him to the minimum base salary. He's getting $24 million in cash the first 12 months of the deal. Like, it all works out really well for him. And then the team structures it in a way so they don't lose cap space this year. And that's important because they don't have a ton of cap space this year.
Yep.
They're in the bottom 5. They're around $7.5 million. All of that stuff goes into getting a deal like this done. But at the end of the day, like, I totally agree. Like, at some point, you're just like, damn the torpedoes, kind of like, you got to figure out how to get it done at some point. So whether that's in the next month or not, obviously, we'll keep you tuned to the latest on that. Sean Payton, after the summer of relaxed Sean, was not interested in talking about Pat today. And even though, I mean, like, I don't want to say he wasn't interested in talking about anything, because he was, you always learn something, I think, when he's up there, whether he's in storytelling mode or if he's Kurt or whatever. But man, it was business. It was business time today, the 15 minutes that we had with Sean Payton.
Yeah, it was like during the offseason program, he was a little bit more relaxed. It seemed like a little bit more eager to talk. This is like, yeah, we're back. We're back in business. Like he's ready to go. And you can tell a little bit in his tone. You can tell about one of the questions he answered about Lucas Kroll today. But but yeah, it's like we're back in the Sean Payton's presser today. Clearly stated one thing: we're back in the swing of things.
Yep, no doubt. And obviously, like, among the things that we will be talking about the most on this podcast for the next month is, the quarterback battle and how long it lasts and what exactly it looks like and all that. And we got, I guess, like, the starting point and not much more from today from Sean on that. And that, I think, like, that's fair, because you don't know how it's going to go until they're out there and competing. But he made it clear today that, starting on Wednesday, when they're out on the field for the first time as a group, like, that they will sort of continue the rotation that we saw through the offseason program. And, like, we weren't out there every day of the offseason program, but it was not like everybody got the exact same number of reps during OT. Like, the way it broke down, I think Stidham probably had the most, and Nix was right there with him. And then Zach Wilson, got fewer, but I'm not sure there's a ton to read into that, but it will just be very interesting, Ryan, the first few days here, like going through this weekend, especially, just sort of how those reps break down. And if somebody, can get off to the kind of start that makes you stand up and take notice and say, like, oh man, Zach Wilson looks really good the first week, or Bo Nix looks really good the first week. All eyes obviously on those three guys going forward.
Yeah, one thing about the quarterback situation, Sean Payton mentioned back during OTAs and minicamp is how, like, he's going to drag this as long as possible until he finds the guy. But today, it seems like during his press conference today, it's like he didn't give a set date or when he wants to announce the starting quarterback, but you can tell he doesn't want to go too deep in training camp during this whole rotation process. So it'll be interesting to see when he will figure out, okay, Jarrett Stidham is going to get more of the first team reps compared to Bo, or the other way around. So, but you can tell, like, he has that sense of, like, he's ready to get this ball moving and figure out this quarterback situation. It's gonna be interesting because you look at Bo Nix as a guy that they drafted 12th overall, and Sean Payton has spoke very highly of him, and he speaks highly of his experience. And kind of like when they did draft him, I kind of got that sense of, oh yeah, drafting a 60 guy who started 61 games in college. I think Sean Payton's kind of having that idea of, we're going to try to get this. We're going to try to get him on that field pretty quick, and having a guy with, like, who's played quite a bit at the collegiate level, kind of to him, kind of like fast track that process, and not like he's going through as you're trying to, like, develop this guy. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But yeah, one thing I did take away from him talking about the quarterbacks is that it's like the whole idea of rotating the quarterbacks. It looks like he doesn't want to spend too much time into camp splitting reps like he did during the offseason program.
Yeah, no doubt. I totally agree with you. Like he said during minicamp, I guess, I think he sort of put the week lead, like game week, is when the decision has to be made. I may end up eating these words. I would be shocked if it takes him that long. And even if it's not like saying the words, like I just would be surprised if it's not clear what direction it's going much earlier than that. And, it's not going to probably be by this weekend or anything, but like, I just don't think it will take that long. And I don't think they want it to take that long. And he's been very adamant. It's not about how fast or whatever. It's about finding the right guy. But at the end of the day, like, all of these guys need the experience. They all need the reps. They all need the work with the top offense. And so, like I do think that they will, if not expedite it, like they're not going to mess around and just rotate guys just to rotate them. So I think I would be surprised if it's drawn out all the way through camp. And I just think like, end of the day, Ryan, like you draft a guy in the first round, he's going to get a chance at some point. Doesn't mean it's a guarantee that it's, week one at Seattle, but everything that Sean has said this year about when you draft a guy, he sits, especially if you have a veteran who can be the model and show him the way. Well, the Broncos don't have that. I mean, Jarrett Stidham's been good with the quarterback room so far this offseason, but he's obviously not Aaron Rodgers or Matt Stafford or Lamar. He's not a veteran guy who's played a lot, who knows exactly everything about preparing and all of that. It's been like every marker you could find about Bo Nix, whether it's about him himself or relative to the quarterback room, all points toward him playing early. But the only thing that he hasn't done is like gone out there in an NFL training camp and shown that he can handle it. So to me, I almost think it's like, it's not fully this, but I think largely Bo Nix is competing against himself for the job. That's not to like downplay the other two, but I think it's more about like what Bo Nix does or doesn't show during camp than it is about, one of the other two guys just outplaying him so thoroughly. And maybe one of them will, but like, I just would be surprised if one of them outplays him so thoroughly, unless it's because Nix is just showing that he's not ready to play. So, time will tell. We'll be talking about it every single day from now until September 8th and beyond.
Yeah, and you made a good point. It's like with this whole quarterback situation, it wouldn't surprise me if we're in Seattle and Bo Nix is your starter. It wouldn't surprise me at all. It's not like when Patrick Mahomes came to the league and there was Alex Smith, and it's not like Bo Nix is coming to Denver and Russell Wilson is still the starting quarterback. It's like I look at that as scenarios. If Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham is right here, I feel like they might lean towards Nix just to usher in, just to get ready for like to usher in this new era. Like, hey, this is our guy. We drafted him in the first round. We think he's ready. We think he's just as. I think he's going to give us a chance to win games this year just as much as Jarrett Stidham would. Let's just get the ball rolling. I can see that happening. It would really have to be a bad like Jarrett Stidham would have to be like up here.
Yeah.
In terms of his play. But if it's like kind of neck and neck, I still think they would lean towards Bo Nix, just given the investment they've put into him, and how necessary Sean Payton wants to be right on this. Like you're talking
yes,
and that's the key part here. Like, we've talked about it before. Is that how much does Sean Payton's pride get into this? Because he came into the draft process letting everyone know that we know how to evaluate quarterbacks better than anyone in the league. Mm-hmm. So this is his chance to prove it right here. So if you think Nix is the week one starter, like it's basically like putting your money where your mouth is. So it's going to be an interesting camp. I'm still a guy. I know, like when you look at Jarrett Stidham was slightly better during the offseason program. A little bit of Bo Nix, but it's not like Bo Nix was like far behind. So I'm personally leaning towards. I think when it's all said and done, I think Nix is going to be starting in Seattle week one. Just given because of what they've seen from him thus far, why they got him, and just that it's not like they're bringing in someone that they have to develop or like this is a guy who started 61 games in college, and that's one of the reasons why Sean Payton got him because he knows like he has some form of experience where we can just speed this process up as quick as possible.
No doubt. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because obviously like these three guys are going to take up so much of the airspace of what's written, what's said, what's talked about, what the fans that go to training camp over the next 3 weeks are going to be watching. But there are so many jobs up for grabs on this roster. And I think that's like That's probably in part because on paper right now, there's a lot of newcomers, a lot of young guys. On paper right now, it looks like an even roster, but there's not a lot of Pat Surtains and Quinn Meinerz on the team, right? Like there's a lot of guys who might win a job that might not make the team. There's a lot of sort of bubble type of guys. And so I'm very interested. Like the quarterback is going to take up a lot of time and energy in camp, but there's a ton of jobs up for grabs, Ryan. So like when you look elsewhere on the roster, like where does your mind go after quarterback? Like what are you most interested to see in the early days of camp in terms of how like just the early blows that get landed on the roster front?
I'm looking at the running backs. I think because this is like Sean Payton came into this job talking about how much he values the run game, how much that's so important to his offense. And last year, quite frankly, they really got a very inconsistent effort from the running game overall.
Yep.
And then you go into the draft, you draft Aldrich Estime in the 5th round, and then you sign Blake Walson, a priority undrafted free agent, and gave him $250,000 in guaranteed money. And this is a guy who I think has the potential to be like another Jaleel McLaughlin and be an undrafted guy and make the roster. This is some because Walson was someone that some people thought he would get drafted in the later rounds. He didn't, and the Broncos were able to sign him. So it's gonna be interesting because it could be a different running back room going into next year. Sean Payton did mention Aldrich Estime is an early down type of running back. So if he shows out during training camp, what does that mean for Javonte Williams? Or do they feel Jaleel McLaughlin can be more of that third down guy than what Samaje Perine provided last year? Because you look at someone like Jaleel, he also, even though he struggled in terms of as a blocker, but he has that speed, that acceleration that they desperately need on that offensive speed, and he has that, and he has the receiving ability as well. So could you be in a position where it's Aldrich and Jaleel next year, or your running back room is Javonte, Aldrich, and Jaleel, or Blake? I'm interested to see how many running backs they're going to keep and what tough decision is going to be made. Because I feel like at that position, it's going to be a tough decision that's going to be made between like Javonte Williams, especially between Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine, because they show they like Jaleel, and they believe that he's kind of in that he was one of the players in the mix of their long-term plans. So all right, what do you do? Because you can't go into year 2 and play him the way you did him and the other rookies. You just can't do that, especially in the direction of this team. So that's the position that I'm looking forward to seeing, because it's like it can go so many directions. And if the Broncos are willing to say, all right, we're going to start this new era, we're about this whole youth movement, if they're really about that word, it could be a realistic scenario where if Aldrich shows out in camp, could he be your starting guy and Jaleel's in third down? Or do you still run with the same 2 guys and Williams and Perine for another year? But then what do you do with Aldrich? It's like it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, that's the one that's been on my mind, like outside the quarterback position.
Also, it would be a great redemption story if in year 2 off the injury, Javonte Williams was sort of like back in his old form, because he really, it was a noble effort for him to get back and play as much as he did last year. And he just really ran out of gas down the stretch. And so like that would be very compelling too, if he's back to being tackle breaking, bowling ball, runaway, Javonte Williams of 2021. I think, to me, like, I really think that the sort of like the shell on defense is fascinating because of all the turnover, right? Like at this time last year, Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson were the starting safeties, and then, Caden Stearns and PJ Lack behind. And at present, as we start camp, PJ's the only one of those guys around. Justin hasn't signed with the team yet, but is headed elsewhere. Kareem is gone. Caden Stearns still hurt from the opener last year. So that defense, along with the cornerback spot opposite Pat, is a new look. I think like Riley Moss put a good foot forward this summer. It will be up to him to carry that through the pads, like putting the pads on and actually playing, being physical, and showing that he can be that starting corner. But I just quickly, and I didn't want it to be all about offense. So the shell on defense, the back shell, very interesting. But man, the receivers, like if you start counting roster spots at receiver, you get into decision mode really fast, right? So like if you take Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims Jr., Josh Reynolds, who they signed in free agency this offseason, and then Troy Franklin, they drafted him in the 4th round. They said they thought he had second round talent. So like he's probably going to make the team. That's 4. Where do you go from there? Like Devon Villay looked really good this summer, another rookie, but again, you got to show it through camp. You've got Tim Patrick back. You love the leadership and the toughness, hasn't played in 2 years. And then you've got this whole fleet of guys who have been on the roster, on the practice squad, up and down, back and forth, from like Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Philip Dorsett, David Sills, like all these guys, all of whom like played at least a little bit last year, Brandon Johnson quite a bit. So you just have like, this is one of those positions where they have so many guys, and I'm not sure it's like a great receiver room on whole. They'll have a chance to prove otherwise, but there's way more guys than there are roster spots. And so like, how do you prioritize? Like if it comes down to a couple of Utah guys like Devon Villay and Tim Patrick, like what do you do? Right. If it comes down to special teams, who's going to show that they can handle, core 4 duties? There's just all of these different, there's all sorts of different ways it could go, sort of like running back. And I'll just be fascinated to see, who slots like cleanly, that's a practice squad guy, and who can carve out a role, potentially as a playmaker in the receiver room beyond the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, and you hit the point because like you look at someone like Tim Patrick, this guy is 30, coming off of 2 back-to-back season and the injuries, and the Broncos go out their way to draft 2 guys,
right,
2 wide receivers in this draft class, and even moved up to get Troy Franklin in the 4th round. So, like you said, like even though Troy Franklin did do a ton during the all-season program, that kind of like wowed you, but there's some value. They have some value in him to move up to go get him. And it's outside of him being Bo Nix's teammate. This is like Troy Franklin is a guy who people saw as at one point like a late first round guy, second round guy, and he fell into the 4th round, leading to the Broncos move up to get him. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I think this year is going to be like for someone like Brandon Johnson, it's going to be a little bit more of an uphill climb than it was last year to make the team. Like, spot clearly opened up once Tim Patrick goes down, but if Tim Patrick is still is in good health, it's gonna be even more of a challenge for someone like a Brandon Johnson to make the team. So it's gonna be like, I think that's gonna be another roster slot it's gonna come down to a tough decision, and it'd be interesting what do they view as Tim Patrick as well, like
right,
because you mentioned like Devon Bailey. This is the guy that they spent all of the offseason saying, hey, this is like Tim Patrick 2.0. So right. It's like it seems like they already got their backup plan in case in case Tim Patrick isn't on the team this fall. So it's gonna be that's another like position group within the offense that's gonna be interesting to see, because you can't just put like 8 wide receivers on your 53-man roster. Right. So it's gonna be like tough decisions will be made at that position. But like I think going to camp, I look like the guys with a guaranteed spot are Court, Josh Reynolds, Marvin Mims, and Troy Franklin, just given what they did in the draft to go acquire them.
Yep, that I feel the same way. It's going to be fascinating. Obviously, starting tomorrow, Wednesday, 4 days in a row. Wednesday, Thursday, reporters will be out there, and then Friday, Saturday is the start of the big circus. All the fans in attendance the first 2 days, and then we're in it. Ryan, off day Sunday, and then six days in a row the week after that. So we're rocking and rolling. We'll have a lot more for you later this week. We'll have video, obviously a ton of coverage, denverpost.com/Broncos. I'll be doing regular video stuff from camp as well. So check that out on the website, on the YouTube channel, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So yeah, let's do it. 2024 NFL season, Broncos season is here. For Ryan McFadden, I'm Parker. Gabriel, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys a few days from now.